When did you realize you married the wrong person? On the wedding day. She spent a fortune on unnecessary things, and I knew I'd be the one fitting the bill on the credit card she ran up. So I told her no more. She said she wanted an ice cream vendor there. We already had 2 dessert bars, told her it was not needed. She fought me on it but finally agreed. Wedding day comes, I'm standing with my groomsmen, in comes the ice cream truck. Knew right then, sadly. It was actually almost immediately after getting married. Our relationship had taken a nosedive as soon as we moved in together. But after we got married, while we were in Greece on our honeymoon, he absolutely lost his mind on me in public. I had wanted to go see a beach on the island that is supposed to be one of the most beautiful in the world, so we tried to catch the bus, but it never came. He screamed at me, telling me he hated traveling with me and how could I ruin his vacation like this. Then we walked to the beach nearby and he went swimming with his 2 friends who he insisted come with us on the trip. I was too stunned and humiliated to do anything except sit on a beach chair and cry. Got married. Went on a honeymoon in China. We were both PhD students at the time. I was working class. Her family was middle class. Her father gave her $10,000 for the honeymoon. So we go to China to celebrate and she wants to do some light pre-dissertation research while there for a month or 2. Fine. It turns out, I spent the entire 2 months alone in tiny hostels, while she did research. I only spoke a few words of Mandarin and I was a broke graduate student. So I couldn't really afford to / didn't have the means to easily get to an airport to fly back home, also had 0 family support back home, even if I did manage to make it home. I felt trapped. I talked to her about how the trip felt like a research trip and not at all like a honeymoon. How I was alone almost every day. We were sharing a laptop while in the trip. I was too poor to own a laptop, despite being in grad school. I opened the laptop one morning before she leaves to go survey a field site without me. Her email is open. She left a message open on the laptop. It's to her father, stating she wishes I wasn't there on the trip, our honeymoon. Again, I was told this would be a honeymoon / maybe a slight detour for research. It turned out to be a research trip where I was a burden. She apologized. We stayed together for a few more years after she got sick and I became a caretaker. I wish, in hindsight, I had left China after reading that email. When she sat me down and with a straight face said, "I've thought about this and you're not going to exercise anymore." I was jogging a few miles a day and would usually bring kids within running stroller. She said, "You're a father and it's too time consuming." That's when I realized I made a terrible mistake, lol. Catching her with another man in my car didn't help the case to stay married. Engaged, not quite married yet. When I had been on mandatory bed rest and caring for our infant son, after having emergency surgery for nearly bleeding to death after a miscarriage, and he came home from work and looked me dead in the face and said, "Why aren't the ducking dishes done?" Called my mom the next morning and told her I was leaving. Hightailed it out of there 2 weeks later. It was a death of 1,000 cuts. One of the first was when I realized she didn't trust me. We had been together around 10 years at this point. But I had a moment of clarity and literally said to her, "You don't trust me, do you?" Before she could answer I said, "You don't trust anybody." And she agreed. She would routinely throw the kids out of the tub and the bathroom completely naked because they splashed her while getting a bath. And not just that, she would yell at the top of her lungs at how bad they were. The kids were around 2 to 4 at the time. God forbid the toddler splashes the water in the tub. Another time I don't even remember the cause, but I tried to play mediator. As in, "Okay daughter, you did something wrong. Let's apologize to mommy." And she would. Then I'd ask mommy to apologize to our daughter for her role, and mom absolutely refused to apologize. I've known this lady more than 20 years and Eve never heard her apologize. Literally never. The final straw was when one of our kids wanted a hug goodnight before bedtime. She locked herself in our bedroom and refused the hug because she had hugged them earlier in the day. Kids were crying. They didn't understand. I was devastated watching this unfold. Why doesn't mom want to hug me? I try my best to not let it impact me. But we share custody now and I have to watch how she interacts without kids. It's hard. The best consolidation is the kids are getting older and they're starting to figure it out. A woman I was dating told me she divorced her husband because after his father died in his arms he was very depressed and she didn't want to be around depressed people. Imagine your father died and a few months later your wife leaves you because you have not recovered from that. On my wedding day. We were married at her parents' house, a beautiful place on a private country club. The entire day was all about her, and she spent more time hanging out with her friend and getting drunk than with me. I stayed busy visiting with all the guests during the day. After all the guests left and it was down to her parents and me, I find her passed out drunk upstairs in a bedroom. I picked her up and carried her to our car to take her home. Needless to say, our wedding night consisted of her sleeping it off. 5 years later she went into inpatient treatment and after she sobered up and was released, she told me that she didn't love me and wanted a divorce. Not married but together for years. Got diagnosed with cancer and she kinda shut off. She then decided to leave several months later. At an appointment I was officially 1 year clear, which is a milestone. I realized I was alone through a lot of it. She never wanted anything to do with it. Was a revelation to myself that the relationship breakdown wasn't all because of me. Got my 3 years tests this weekend, blood tests and scans etc. Current GF is driving me and then taking me out to lunch afterwards. Hell of an upgrade. 6 months after our wedding when I found out about the emotional, he says only emotional but I'm pretty sure it was physical too, affair through text messages. He had sent his affair partner screenshots of my texts to him in which I was begging him to talk to me and tell me what was wrong. They both proceeded to make fun of my desperation to fix my marriage and his affair partner said something along the lines of, "Poor Valiant, she doesn't know anything and keeps begging you for attention and affection." The moment I read those words I realized how big of a mistake I had made. When I came home from the ER after being diagnosed with a severe lung disorder, and she immediately left me with the kids so she could go out drinking with friends. Her exact words were, "I need you to make them dinner, I'm running late to meet up with everyone." Few years back, I had a 104-degree fever, passing in and out of consciousness, talking in my sleep, etc. I was in a bad way. My now ex-wife wakes me to ask if I'm okay and tells me that she's going shopping with her friend right now. We had a 5-year-old that she left in my care despite my state, so she could go shopping. At 2 p.m. I finally managed to stay awake long enough to feed our child after the poor kid tried to wake me for the 20th time. He was also very excited about this Christmas kids party thing I'd promised him a week earlier I'd take him to. She could have taken him, but no, shopping. I managed to take a bunch of painkillers and anti-inflammatory drugs. Load up on sugars just enough to take him out 'cause I felt so fucking bad for him that day. Anyway, I divorced her a couple years later. There was a lot wrong, but this one event is the one that sent me over the edge. I almost did, and TBH, there were a lot of red flag prior to this, but this was the catalyst. We'd been dating 4 years, slated to be married in 8 months. I noticed he was making lots of likes and comments on Britney's MySpace. Nothing huge or obvious. Then not long after, he locked his phone, but I managed to see he was also getting MSGs regularly from someone also named Britney. I had suspected, but no proof now. I worked swing and nights at the time. Came home early one night to him in our bed, with you know who. Brittany. First thing this ducker says when I walk in on them is, "Get this. There was no exchange of fluids, I promise babe." Later Brittany got a hold of me on MySpace, we met up. She had no idea I was even in the picture. We're still friends. I kicked him and his fluids out of my house. The end. ETA, Brittany let me read all over their correspondence via MySpace and text. She was very upfront about not realizing he was with someone. I will admit Brittany was not exceptionally bright, but he had this thing all worked out. He stuffed all my stuff in a closet. Even removed photos of us from the walls. I don't wear makeup, and at the time didn't own much stuff. We were poor, I was the only one working. He kept getting fired for sexual harassment. Red flag, I know. He also kept the house dark while they watched a movie, then moved to the bed. Said it made it romantic. Thanks again for watching or listening. Whatever suits the situation. I do very much appreciate you. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to get notified. Until next time.